The bullet hit the marble column 3 inches from his face. That was the first thing anyone heard. Not a scream, not a warning. Just a sharp, surgical crack of a high-caliber round splitting stone, and the fine white dust that followed, floating like powder in the floodlit air of the Grand Celestia Hotel's rooftop ballroom. Then the second shot came. This one was closer. Kong Min-jae did not flinch. That was a terrifying thing about him. He never flinched. Even as 300 guests in evening gowns and tailored suits began to scatter, even as crystal glasses shattered against the marble floor, and the string quartet abandoned their instruments mid-note, Min-jae simply turned toward the sound, his dark eyes sweeping the upper balcony with cold calculation, the way a man surveys a problem he intends to solve rather than survive. He had no time to solve anything. She came from nowhere. 1 second he was standing alone at the center of the chaos, a target in a 12 million won suit. And the next was a hand, firm, decisive, with the grip of someone who had done this before, that seized his forearm and pulled him sideways with a force that moved his entire 200-pound frame without resistance, driving him behind the nearest marble column as a third bullet tore through the air where his chest had been a half-second before. Min-jae hit the pillar hard. He turned, ready to shove off whoever had grabbed him, and found himself looking into a face he had never seen before. Dark eyes, absolute stillness. Not calm the way someone who is pretending to be calm looks calm, but the real kind, the kind that had been trained, tested, broken, and rebuilt so many times that composure had stopped being an effort and become a permanent condition. She was dressed for the gala. Black gown, halter neck, heels that made her nearly his height. One hand was still on his arm. The other had already drawn a compact firearm from somewhere he could not identify. He had not seen it on her body a second ago, and she was scanning the upper balcony with the focus, tilted precision of someone calculating angles. "Stay behind me," she said. Her voice was quiet, not whispered. Quiet, the way someone speaks when they have decided that panic is a waste of energy. "Who are—" "Down." She pushed him lower against the column. A fourth shot struck the pillar above their heads. She did not blink. Around them, the ballroom had dissolved into full panic. Security personnel in black earpieces were shouting into radios. Guests were crawling toward exits on their knees. Chairs overturned. Floodlights swung wildly. Someone, a woman in red, was screaming near the bar, frozen in place with her champagne glass still somehow in her hand. The woman in black, beside Min-jae, was not panicking. She was counting. He could see it in the movement of her eyes. Left balcony, right balcony, main floor, service entrance. She was mapping the room, measuring sight lines, calculating. And then she moved. It happened so fast that Min-jae would later struggle to describe the sequence. She broke cover in a low diagonal sprint toward a man who had emerged from behind a catering cart near the east wall. Not a waiter. He could see that now, dressed like one but moving all wrong, reaching inside his jacket with a deliberate motion of someone pulling a weapon. She reached him before he cleared the holster. One hand redirected his gun arm outward. The other struck his throat in a precise, compact blow. His knees buckled. She caught the weapon before it hit the floor, turned, dropped to one knee, aimed at the upper balcony, and fired twice. A figure fell from the balcony railing. Silence. Not the full silence of a room with no sound, but that particular silence of 300 people holding their breath at the same moment, unable to process what they had just watched. She rose from her knee, checked the fallen man on the floor, unconscious, breathing. She checked the exits. She looked at the balcony. She ejected the magazine from the weapon she had taken, checked it, replaced it. Only then did she turn back toward where Min-jae was still crouched behind the column. Their eyes met. She said nothing. She simply scanned him, head, torso, legs, the way a medic does, fast and systematic, confirming no injury. Then she turned, moved through a crowd of shell-shocked guests, and was gone. Before we continue, if this is your first time coming across my channel, like, share, and subscribe. Drop in the comment section why you are watching from and the time why you are watching this. Now let's continue. Min-jae stood slowly. His lead security officer, Park Ji-soo, appeared at his shoulder looking pale and destroyed, an earpiece dangling uselessly, and a thin cut on his jaw from where he had apparently thrown himself behind a table. "Sir, are you? I'm sorry, we—" "Who was she?" Min-jae said. "Sir." The woman. He was still looking at the place in the crowd where she had disappeared. The one in black. Who was she? Park Ji-soo had no answer. What the cameras had captured would circulate through every media outlet in South Korea by morning. The headline that ran in the Jungong Ilbo read, "Unknown woman stops third attempt on tech giant's life." The English-language Korea Herald called her a ghost in heels. The footage was 47 seconds long, grainy ballroom security video. The motion blurred by frantic camera movement, but showed enough. A figure moving through chaos with complete intentionality. A threat neutralized in under 4 seconds. What the cameras had not captured was her face. What we thought was going to be a peaceful evening, a 5 million won per plate charity gala, a celebration of Kong Industries' 15th anniversary. 300 guests, 400 staff, 8 security personnel, and 1 very controlled CO, turned into night that changed everything because she had been there, and she had chosen not to stay. The emergency board meeting convened at 7 the following morning in the 42nd floor conference room of the Kong Industries Tower in Gangnam. The floor-to-ceiling windows looked out across the Han River, the city below still soft with morning haze. A tray of untouched tea sat at the center of the long table. No one had touched it. Kong Min-jae sat at the head of the table with the precise stillness of a man who had decided before entering the room that he would not raise his voice, would not concede ground, and would not, under any circumstances, let these people see how exhausted he was. He was 33 years old and had run Kong Industries alone for 4 years since his father's stroke. 12,000 employees across 7 countries. Technology infrastructure contracts with 5 national governments. A personal net worth that made certain other men in this room feel a very specific kind of competitive anxiety. He was also the target of 3 assassination attempts in 2 months. The board chair, Oh Sung-won, 64 years old, reading glasses, the patient expression of a man who believed patience was the same thing as wisdom, clasped his hands on the table and spoke first. Min-jae, the shareholders have been patient. We have been patient. But this situation is no longer just a security matter. It is becoming a reputational one. Is it? When the CEO of a publicly traded company is being shot in front of 300 guests and 2 news cameras, it affects confidence. It affects our stock price. It affects partnerships that took years to build. Then, perhaps, Min-jae said, the board's priority should be finding who is ordering these attempts rather than measure my market impact. Director Huang, who sat 3 seats down and had never once in 4 years agreed with Min-jae on anything, leaned forward. We are suggesting a temporary leave, 60 days, while security is restructured. No, Min-jae. I said no. He said it without heat. He said it the way he said everything, as a fact, not a negotiation. I will not be removed from the operation of this company by people who cannot even identify a sniper on our own event rooftop. What I will do is replace the security team that failed last night, and I will retain whoever it was that performed their job correctly. Park Ji-soo, sitting near the wall rather than at the table, his position exactly, Min-jae thought, cleared his throat. Sir, we've been trying to identify the woman from the video. We? I don't need you to identify her. Min-jae stood. The meeting was over. He had decided that. I need you to find me someone who can keep me alive while we figure out who is trying to kill me. Do you understand the difference between those 2 tasks? The room was quiet. Director Huang spoke again, and this time there was something different in his voice. Not anger, not quite, but the careful performance of concern over a substrate of something else. Min-jae, this is not about your capability. No one questions your capability. It is about optics. It is about what happens to this company's international partnerships when our CEO is seen being dragged behind a marble pillar by a woman nobody can identify. I wasn't dragged, Min-jae said. The footage shows a competent security professional doing her job, while mine failed to do theirs. He looked at Huang, directly, long enough to be a message. I will ask you not to confuse the categories. Huang fell quiet. Oh Sung-won cleared his throat with considered timing of man who believed his age entitled him to the last word in every room. The family has also expressed concern. The family, Min-jae repeated. His tone did not shift. Which member of the family, specifically, is concerned? A pause around the table. Jungwoo SSI has reached out to several board members, informally, as a concerned relative. Jungwoo, Min-jae said, is a concerned relative in the same way a man holding a match is concerned about fire prevention. Tell him I receive his concern. Tell him I am handling it. Tell him anything further from him goes through my legal team. He stood. The meeting was over. He had decided that. Restructure the security rotation today. Every person who was on duty at the gala is suspended pending review. Park Jisu has 24 hours to give me an explanation worth hearing before I replace him entirely. And the woman? Oh Sungwon said, if you intend to pursue her as a... I intend to pursue whatever keeps me alive, Min Jae said. I suggest the board focus on the same objective. He picked up his phone from the table, buttoned his jacket, and walked out. It took Park Jisu 36 hours. He came to Min Jae's office on the 44th floor just past 9 on Wednesday night, when the building was quiet and the city lights outside were the only warmth in the room, and he set a single manila folder on the desk. Min Jae did not look up from a contract he was reviewing. There's one name, Park Jisu said. Every high-level contact I have, Interpol, NIS, private sector, they all gave me the same name. Some of them gave it without hesitation. Some of them gave it and then asked me not to say they had. Min Jae set his pen down. He looked at the folder. Zuri Cole, Park Jisu said. Former U.S. military contractor. Special operations trained. Has worked private sector for the last 6 years across 12 countries. Has never lost a principal. Not once. He paused. There are also rumors that she's worked for people you don't say no to. That she has a 100% threat neutralization record. That she has never once been bribed, turned, or bought, even when the offers were significant. What kind of significant? 8 figures. Min Jae opened the folder. There was a photograph. Not a glamour shot. Not a pose security headshot, but what looked like a surveillance image. Taken from a distance, a woman walking through what looked like a European airport. She was wearing a gray jacket, moving with a kind of self-contained purpose that made everyone else in the frame look like they were wandering. Her face was turned slightly from the camera. But even in the partial view, there was something recognizable in the posture, the precision of the stride. He had seen that precision before. 3 nights ago, in heels, in a ballroom with a gun. Get her here, he said. Park Jisu hesitated. Sir, she doesn't take assignments easily. She chooses her clients. Then give her a reason to choose me. What reason should I? Tell her the truth. Someone is trying to kill me, and every piece of security I have has failed to stop them. Tell her I need the best. He closed the folder. Tell her if she declines, I'll understand. But tell her anyway. She arrived 2 days later. She walked into the Kong Industries lobby on a Friday afternoon without announcement. No entourage. No luggage visible beyond a single black bag over her shoulder. She wore dark trousers, a structured gray top, flat shoes. She spoke to the receptionist in Korean, not tourist Korean, not carefully rehearsed phrases, but fluent, matter-of-fact Korean that made the young woman behind the desk blink in surprise, and said she was there for a meeting with Director Park. Park Jisu met her in the elevator lobby on the 38th floor. He extended his hand. She shook it once, firm, released it, and looked around the space with the same quality of attention a contractor gives a building they're considering buying. Thorough, skeptical, registering everything. Mr. Park, she said. Ms. Cole, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure. I don't do courtesy meetings, she said. I'm here because the job is interesting. Walk me through your current security architecture while we move. Park Jisu blinked, then walked. He explained the system as they moved through the floor, the access points, the camera grid, the rotation schedule for personnel, the protocol hierarchy. She listened without interrupting, but he noticed her gaze moving constantly, checking corners, noting camera angles, pausing briefly at a door whose keypad faced away from the corridor and would leave a user's back exposed while entering a code. That door, she said. Anyone with a sight line from that intersection can observe an access code being entered. It's an internal floor. Internal floors are where most security failures originate. Internal access means internal knowledge. Internal knowledge is where your leak is. She said it without accusation, without drama, just information. You have a leak. You know that. Park Jisu said nothing. The gala, she continued, walking again. The route was published internally 3 days before. The sniper had a prepared position on that balcony. There was rigging on the railing, according to the police report. That means at least 12 hours of setup. On a locked floor, that's internal access. She glanced at him. Who knew the full event layout? Security team, event staff, senior management. How many people total? 30, perhaps 35. Narrow it to 15. Anyone with both layout access and venue access. That's your starting pool. She stopped outside a set of double doors. Is he in there? Park just hesitated, then nodded. The test first, she said. I was told there would be a demonstration. Yes, we've arranged. There are 3 personnel inside who will... I know what's inside. She set her bag down against the wall, rolled her left shoulder once, loosening it, opened the door. The test lasted 28 seconds. 3 of Kong Industries' senior security personnel, all former military, all over 6 feet, all selected specifically because Park Ji-soo had wanted to give her the most credible possible challenge, were positioned at points inside the room with instructions to restrain her on entry. The first reached her in 2 seconds. She redirected his momentum with a pivot that used his own weight against him and put him on the floor without injury. The second came from the side. She had already turned. Forearm block, wrist lock, controlled takedown. The third hesitated. That hesitation lasted less than a second. She closed the distance, moved inside his reach before he could recalibrate, and had his arm behind his back and his face 2 inches from the wall before he had finished deciding what to do. She released him, stepped back. The room was absolutely silent. Kong Min-jae stood near the windows on the far side, watching. He had not moved. His expression had not changed, which was the same as it always was, controlled, unreadable, the carefully maintained neutrality of a man who had learned that every visible reaction was information he was giving away for free. But his eyes had changed. They were very still, very focused, the way eyes get when a person is trying to decide whether what they have just seen is real. Zuri Cole straightened her collar, looked at the 3 men on the floor, 2 already pushing themselves up, the third standing straight again, and looking at her with something between wounded pride and genuine respect. Then she looked at Min-jae. He walked toward her slowly, stopped 6 feet away. You were at the gala, he said. Yes. You didn't stay. My job that night was to assess your current security capability. She met his gaze without effort. I assessed it, and it's inadequate. A beat. You were not sent by anyone, he said. It was not quite a question. No, you came independently. I was already in Seoul. I had been watching your situation for 3 weeks. 3 assassination attempts in 8 weeks is a specific pattern. Whoever is ordering them is escalating. The intervals are getting shorter. She paused. I wanted to see the operation before I agreed to take the assignment. The gala gave me that. Min-jae studied her for a moment. Then he said, And do you agree to take the assignment? Provisionally, she said. I have conditions. Of course you do. They are non-negotiable. He almost smiled. Almost. Tell me. You don't leave any secure location without me present and informed. Not for 30 seconds. Not for a phone call. Not to step outside for air. If you move, I know about it before you move. She held his gaze. You don't argue during an active threat. You follow my instructions immediately and without discussion. Every second of debate in a threat situation is a second the threat is still active. And you tell me everything. Every meeting, every communication, every person you suspect, every detail you think is irrelevant. The irrelevant details are usually the ones that matter. She folded her hands in front of her, a gesture of finality, not submission. If you can't work within those conditions, I walk out now and we both save each other the time. The room waited. Min-jae looked at her for a long moment, long enough that most people would have grown uncomfortable. She did not grow uncomfortable. Agreed, he said. Something shifted in the air. Not warmth, exactly. Not the beginning of anything easy. More like the way 2 forces acknowledge each other before they have decided whether to collide or to combine. She moved into the security suite on the 48th floor of the penthouse that evening. It was not a small room. Nothing in this building was small, but she reduced it to essentials within an hour. Bag unpacked but contained. Equipment checked and positioned. Every entry point assessed. She knew the floor plan before she slept. She did not sleep much. Min-jae noticed this. He noticed it because he did not sleep much either. And so when the penthouse was quiet and the city outside the floor-to-ceiling glass was doing what cities do in the hours before dawn, breathing slowly, holding itself, He would sometimes move through the space and find her already awake, not restless, not anxious, just awake. The way certain people are awake, as though sleep and wakefulness are tools she deployed strategically rather than needs she surrendered to. The first morning, he came into the main living area at 5:40 and found her at the kitchen island with black coffee, a tactical map of the lower 3 floors spread across the counter, and a red pen making notations in a script so small he could not read it without leaning in. He made his own coffee without speaking, set it on the opposite side of the island. She did not look up from the map. "The service elevator on 39, she said. "It shows as maintenance only on the building schematic, but there are fresh wear patterns on the floor near the call button. Someone uses it regularly, not maintenance." "Staff shortcut," he said. "The kitchen team uses it to move catering to the executive dining floor. Has done for years." "Does security know?" "It's been the arrangement since the building was constructed." "That's not the same as security knowing." She looked up at him then. "First time that morning. I need a full briefing on every informal arrangement, shortcut, and workaround in this building that isn't in the official security document. Today. I'll arrange it." She returned to the map. He stood on the other side of the island and drank his coffee and looked at her in the early gray light. And the thing he noticed, though he would not have admitted to anyone, certainly not to her, was that he was not irritated. He was almost always irritated by people in his space, by their needs, their noise, their demands on his attention. This woman had been in his penthouse for less than 12 hours, had issued him more direct instructions than any person had in 4 years, and he was not irritated. He was something else. He could not name it precisely. He wasn't sure he wanted to. The days that followed had a particular rhythm. She was everywhere without being intrusive. Or rather, she occupied the space with such purposeful economy that her presence felt more like architecture than company. She was simply there, the way walls are there, the way locked doors are there, until you realize that the security they provide is the reason you feel free to move. He tested the limits of her instructions, because he was who he was, and testing limits was as natural to him as breathing. On the 3rd day, he attempted to leave for a morning meeting without informing her. He got as far as the elevator lobby. She was already in it, standing with her coffee, bag on her shoulder, earpiece in, looking at her phone. She did not look up. "Hyundai Capitol Building, U.O., she said. 30-minute drive. I've already reviewed the building security and rerouted us through the south entrance, which has better sightline control than the main lobby." He stared at her. "How did you—" "Your assistant calendars sync to the security system. I added myself." She looked up then. "You were going to leave without telling me. I was going to inform you on the way down." "That is not what on the way down means." "It means before you move," she said, with the patient firmness of someone who has had this exact conversation before and has no intention of having it again. Before, not during. Before. He got into the elevator. She followed. They stood side by side in silence as the elevator descended. He was annoyed and he knew it showed, and he didn't care. She was unaffected and she knew he was annoyed and she didn't care either. He said, "Has anyone ever told you that you're extremely difficult to be around?" "Yes," she said. And they were all still alive at the end of the assignment. He turned to look at her. She was still looking forward. He said, "Is that a joke?" She said, "I don't make jokes on the clock." He laughed, a short, involuntary sound, the kind that escapes before the person decides whether to allow it. He caught it quickly and looked back at the elevator doors as if nothing had happened. She said nothing, but he thought, though he was not certain, that the corner of her mouth moved, barely. A fraction. They argued, often, not about threats, about those she was absolute and immovable, and he had learned within the first week that attempting to reason with her in a threat situation was like trying to negotiate with gravity, but about everything else, about schedules, about access, about the clothing he purchased for her, when a formal state dinner required them to attend together, and she declined the gown his assistant had chosen. "I wear what allows me to move," she said, standing in the walk-in closet of the security suite, where 3 carefully selected formal gowns had been hung with the price tag still on. "There's a minister of defense attending this dinner," he said from the doorway, arms crossed. "There is a deputy prime minister. There are 40 journalists in the building. You will be at my side all evening in the way you present." "The way I present is not your concern." She turned to face him. "My function is to keep you alive. not to decorate your evening. That is not what I will wear something appropriate. It will allow me to move. It will allow me to conceal what I need to conceal, and it will not embarrass you. Her voice was steady. That is the limit of what I'm willing to negotiate on this. He looked at her, then at the gowns, then at her. Fine, he said. She wore a deep navy structured jumpsuit with a tailored blazer over it. She looked, as it turned out, extraordinary. He noticed 3 separate people at the dinner. People who had been staring at him out of obligation or wariness for years. Staring at her instead out of something he could not categorize. He found this satisfying in a way that confused him. The night the power went out was the first time he saw beneath it. A summer storm had been building over Seoul for 2 days. The kind that turns the Han River silver and makes the city feel pressed down under a dark and enormous hand. And when it finally broke, it broke fully. Rain that sounded like gravel against glass. Lightning in continuous sheets. And at 11:47, with one enormous crack of thunder that vibrated the penthouse windows and their frames, the power went. The backup generator took 12 seconds to engage. In those 12 seconds, the penthouse was completely dark. Min Jae was used to the dark. He sat in the main living room with the city's emergency lights bleeding orange and white through the rain-covered windows and waited for the generator to do what generators do. When it did, the emergency lighting came on, soft, amber, enough to see but not enough for comfort. He got up and moved toward the kitchen for water. And in the narrow corridor between the living room and the kitchen, he nearly walked into her. She was standing very still, pressed back against the corridor wall, both hands in front of her, one of them holding the handle of a knife she had drawn from somewhere. Her eyes were wide, not with the calculated vigilance he had come to recognize, with something older than that. She saw him at the same moment he saw her. He stopped moving immediately. Purely instinct, something in her posture communicating that sudden movement in this moment would be wrong. For 3 or 4 seconds, neither of them moved. Then she exhaled, a slow, deliberate breath. Her hands lowered. She returned the knife to wherever it had come from. She pressed the back of one hand against her own mouth briefly, the way someone does when they are forcing themselves back into themselves. "Storm," she said. Her voice was quieter than usual. Controlled, but quieter. "Yes," he said carefully. The power going out. Another breath. "I'm fine." "I know," he said, though he wasn't sure he knew anything at all in that moment. She turned toward the kitchen as if to walk past him, and he did not ask the question directly. He was not a man who asked direct questions when indirect ones served better, but he said quietly, "My father used to say that soldiers carry their wars home inside them, long after the war ends." She stopped, did not turn around. "You are not a soldier anymore," he said. "But I think some nights you forget that." A long silence, long enough that he thought she would simply walk away. She said, "Aleppo, 2019, extraction operation. There were 12 civilians in the building. We were told there were 4. She paused. "We didn't all make it out." He said nothing, because there was nothing to say, and because he understood, in a visceral way he had not expected to understand, that what she had just told him was not something she told people. "Go to sleep," she said. Her voice had recovered its steadiness. "The storm won't breach the building." "I don't sleep," he said. "I know." She kept walking. "Neither do I." He started watching her differently after that night, not the way a man watches a woman he wants. Though he would have been lying if he said that complication did not exist, but the way a person watches someone they've begun to see is real, not as a function, not as a category, as a specific person with a specific weight of history behind their eyes. He noticed things, that she ate precisely and without pleasure, like refueling, that she read, not professional documents, but actual books, physical ones, Korean translations of things he had not expected. Garcia Marquez, Toni Morrison, a battered copy of Pachinko that she had clearly read before, the spine white from folding, that she had a habit, when she was thinking, of touching the scar on her left shoulder, just briefly, just her fingertips, as if confirming it was still there. He noticed that she smiled exactly once in the first 3 weeks. It happened when his chief of staff, Lee Junhean, a very competent 50-year-old man who had worked for his father and ran the company calendar with the severity of a military operation, slipped on the freshly waxed lobby floor and executed what could only be described as an inadvertent split, then rose to his full height and walked on as if nothing had occurred. She was 3 feet behind Min Jae. He did not see it. He heard it, a brief, involuntary exhale through the nose, the ghost of a sound. When he turned, she was completely straight-faced. "Did you just laugh?" he said. "No," she said. "You laughed. I don't laugh on the clock. That's a different rule than the one about jokes." She walked past him. He followed her, trying and failing to keep the smile off his own face. If you're watching or reading this right now, drop in the comments. What time is it where you are, and what city are you watching from? We want to know how far this story is reaching. On the 5th day, he came home from a late board call to find her on the floor of the security suite doing controlled breathing exercises, and he stood in the doorway for 3 seconds before she said, without opening her eyes, "Your tie is loosened." The call was with Tokyo. How do you loosen it by 3 inches when you're managing frustration in Japanese. You loosen it by 1 inch in Korean. In English, you don't loosen it at all. She opened her eyes. The Tokyo infrastructure deal is delayed again. He stared at her. Then he sat on the floor across from her, back against the wall, and said nothing for a while. She returned to her breathing. He said, eventually, "Do you know what the worst part of running a company is?" She waited, not the failure, not the competition, the waiting. He leaned his head back against the wall. Every decision takes months to resolve. Every action has a counteraction that takes 6 months to identify. You make something happen, and you wait to see whether it lands. And then you make something else happen, and you wait again. He paused. I have been waiting for years to understand who wants me dead. It has been extraordinarily tedious. She looked at him. The corner of her mouth moved. Most people find it frightening. I find it tedious and frightening. The tedium is worse. She studied him. You need to sleep. I've told you. I don't sleep. I know what you've told me. I'm telling you what you need. She stood in one fluid motion, picked up a small blanket from the arm of the chair, held out to him. Lie down, right here. I'll stay in this room. He looked at the blanket, then at her. I'm not a child. I know. Children sleep without being told. She held out further. The floor is clean. The building is currently secure. You have 12 minutes of absolute stillness available to you, and they won't last. She paused. Take them. He took the blanket. He did not sleep, but he lay on the floor of the security suite for 11 minutes with his eyes closed and his breathing slow, and when he stood again, he looked not rested exactly, but as though someone had been set down briefly and was slightly less heavy for the setting down. He didn't thank her. She didn't expect thanks. But in the morning, there was a coffee waiting for him at the kitchen island before he woke up, and it was exactly the temperature he drank it at, and there was no map on the counter to compete with it. Small things. He was beginning to understand that with her, it was always the small things. At a private oceanside resort, 300 executives, 2 heads of state, media presence carefully managed and positioned. Min Jae was the keynote speaker. The event had been planned for 4 months. The venue was supposedly secure. There's a particular quality to dread that professionals develop. It is not fear. Fear is reactive. Dread is something quieter. The recognition, building slowly from accumulated detail, that something is wrong, that the variables are not adding up, that the space between the numbers is hiding something. Zuri had felt it since the car pulled off the highway. She could not have named it precisely. The security detail at the gate had been courteous, organized, thorough. The venue plan matched the advance brief she had requested and received. The staff carried themselves correctly. But there was something in the air, the way there is sometimes a change in air pressure before a storm that you feel before any instrument records it, and she cataloged it without speaking, because speaking prematurely would create noise in the system, and she needed to stay clear. She stayed close to Min Jae at all times. During the pre-event reception, she stood 3 feet from his left shoulder while he worked the room. That particular effortless authority he had in crowds, the way he drew people toward him not by warmth but by gravity, and she let her eyes do what they always did. Scan map hold, waitstaff movement, security patrol timing, exit locations, anything that deviated from the expected. The deviation came at 8:42. A waiter near the east service door moved wrong. Not dramatically wrong, just wrong enough, too deliberate. The way someone who has memorized how to behave naturally moves instead of naturally behaving. She was already shifting before the thought had fully completed. Bar. Now. She said it quietly, close to Min Jae's ear. Her hand was already on his arm. He turned to look at her. Don't look at him. Bar. Now. Her voice dropped to barely anything. Trust me? He moved. They were 3 steps from the bar when the East Service door exploded inward. Not a bomb, a forced entry, for men in tactical clothing moving fast through the opening, and 2 more coming from the service corridor on the opposite side, and the waiter she had marked was no longer moving wrong, because he had stopped pretending to be a waiter at all and had a weapon in his hand. The room erupted. What followed was 37 seconds that Zuri later could not fully account for, because in situations like that, the thinking brain steps aside and something faster and more practice takes over. Movement, response, threat management. The body following pathways laid down over years of training and reinforced by the specific terrible knowledge of what happens when those pathways fail. She put Min Jae behind the bar with a flat-handed shove and spun to face the first attacker. He was big, fast, trained. She gave him that. He got inside her guard on the first exchange, and she felt the impact across her ribs, and she used the backwards momentum of it to create space and came back in low and hard, and he went down. Glass shattered above her head. A second attacker. Gun. She dropped below the bar line, felt something burn across her upper arm, and registered it the way a runner registers a blister. Noted, filed, not important yet, and came up on the other side of the bar and closed on the gunman before he could reset his aim. The fight moved through the room. Tables. A pillar. The edge of the outdoor terrace, where rain had begun to fall in thin, cold sheets off the sea. She was tracking 3 men, managing the space, protecting the approach to Min Jae's position, while 2 venue security guards who were still functional worked the east entrance. The last attacker came from behind. She heard the footfall a half-second early. Turned. Got partially turned. The blow landed on her left side, high on the rib cage, and she felt something give, not break, not quite, but bend the way things bend before they break, and she went to one knee. She was back up in a second. The attacker hesitated at her speed. That hesitation was all she needed. When it was over, and it was over quickly, the way these things either are or are not. She stood in the middle of the shattered reception space and breathed and cataloged and found her position. She found Min Jae. He was behind the bar where she had left him, standing, uninjured, but he was looking at her the way she had never seen him look at anything before. Not with the cold analytical gaze he used for everything, with something cracked open behind it, something that had no calculation in it at all. He crossed the space between them in long strides. "You're hurt," he said. "I'm fine. You were shot." He was looking at her arm. The burn she had registered and filed was more visible now. A grazed surface. She had been right about that, but it was bleeding. "It's a graze. You're bleeding." His voice had changed. Not loud. Quieter, actually, but different in a way she could not categorize. A quality in it that she had not heard from him before. He reached toward her arm, and then stopped himself, as if suddenly aware to reach, as if something in the gesture embarrassed him by its instinctiveness. "We need to secure the room," she said. "Your safety is—" "You just fought 6 men to keep me alive." He was very close, his voice very low. "The room can wait 30 seconds. She held his gaze and said nothing. The room did not wait 30 seconds. Venue security and local police arrived in force, and the next hour was protocol. Statements, clearances, medical, and she submitted to a field dressing on her arm from the venue medic and told him the rib was bruised, not cracked, and he looked at her skeptically, and she looked back at him until he wrote down bruised. Min Jae did not leave her side, not while the medic worked, not during the police statement, not when the Kong Industries crisis team arrived with phones and tablets and urgent operational needs. He dealt with everything that needed to be dealt with while staying within 10 feet of her, and she was aware of this in a way she did not want to be aware of it. And she did not say anything about it because there was nothing useful to say. Back at the penthouse in Seoul, he told the medical team to leave. They looked at him. "I will manage this myself," he said. "Leave the supplies." They left the supplies. They left. He sat beside her on the couch in the penthouse's main room with the medical kit open on the table, and she let him, because the arm needed fresh dressing, and she was more tired than she had been in a long time, and she knew when to spend energy and when not to. He was careful, more careful than she had expected from a man with his hands. The hands of someone who handled contracts and devices and controlled spaces, not wounds. He cleaned the graze with deliberate gentleness, and she kept her breathing even and looked at the window. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "Everything hurts," she said. You learn to separate hurt from damage. He looked at the window. Outside, the Han River was doing what it did at this hour, dark and slow and uninterested in the problems of people. She had always found water, like, destabilizing. She wasn't sure why. Perhaps because water had no agenda. Perhaps because stillness, even in motion, was the thing she most wanted and the thing she most rarely allowed herself. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "Everything hurts," she said. You learn to separate hurt from damage. He taped the dressing, did not immediately pull his hands back. His fingers rested on her forearm, just below the fresh bandage. She was aware of the warmth of it in a way she did not try to analyze. 6 men, he said. Not a statement. Not quite a question. 7, including the one in the corridor. 7 men, he said. He let the number sit. And you are sitting here with a graze and a bruised rib. The bruised rib is new information. The medic told me. He also told me you insisted it was bruised when it may be cracked. It doesn't crack the way a cracked rib cracks. You are basing this on extensive personal experience of cracked ribs. Yes, she said. He looked at her. How many? Total? Yes. 4. This is not the 5th. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What is it like? Knowing that you're the only thing standing between someone and death, and walking toward it anyway. She considered the question. Most people did not ask it that way. They either assumed courage was the answer, or they assumed she was built differently, and therefore the question didn't apply. He was asking what it actually felt like, in the moment, in the body. He was asking like someone who wanted the true answer. It's not courage, she said. Not most of the time. It's faster than courage. Courage requires a decision. What I do is closer to, she searched for the word, geometry. The body moves along the most efficient line between the person you're protecting and the threat. The math happens before the feeling. And the feeling comes after, when it's quiet. She looked at the window. Like now, what does a feeling say? She looked at him. He was watching her with a patient, unflinching attention of a man who had decided that discomfort was not a reason to stop asking. She said, Tonight, it says I was very close. He held her gaze. So was I, he said, to losing you. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. She said, Why risk your life for someone you barely know? He blinked. You asked me that. I asked you that because it was a question you asked me 2 weeks ago. What is my answer? Tell me. He thought about it seriously. She gave him the time. He said, Because the alternative, what the world looks like without you in it, is not a world I'm prepared to accept. He paused. That's not rational. No, she said. It is what it is anyway. Yes, she said. It usually is. Kept low. Let the venue security handle it. The venue security didn't handle the last 3 attempts. Zuri. She looked at him. It was the first time he had used her first name. She was not sure when that line had moved. Because failure gets people killed, she said. It was the same thing she had said to him weeks ago, after the first attack. She had meant it both times. He looked at her for a long moment, a moment that asked something she did not answer. You don't believe your life matters, he said. Not harshly, not as an accusation. With the quiet precision of someone who has figured out the shape of something, and is naming it carefully, because they know naming it too loudly will make it disappear. She said nothing. That is not true, he said. Go to sleep, Min Jae. It's not true, he said again. She stood, slowly, because a rib made standing slowly a necessity, not a choice. I'm going to check the floor, she said. She did, and she stood in the corridor for a moment with her back against the wall and her eyes closed, and she let herself be, just for that moment, just those few seconds, something other than composed. The shake that comes after adrenaline clears, the breath that finally fills the lungs properly, the brief and private acknowledgement that had been very close. Then she opened her eyes, and she was composed again. He began watching over her while she slept. She knew, because she slept lightly and the small sounds of the penthouse were familiar to her now. And sometimes in the early morning hours, in the period between 3 and 5, when the night is most silent, she would register the slight shift in the quality of the darkness near her doorway. Not threatening, not intrusive, just present. She did not call him on it. She should have. She knew she should have. The professional boundary was clear, and she had drawn it herself, and it was important for reasons that had nothing to do with him personally and everything to do with the fact that she had been here before. Not with him specifically, but in this specific emotional territory, and she knew how it ended, and she knew what it cost. But she did not call him on it. She let the doorway be what it was, and she breathed, and in the morning they were always both exactly who they were supposed to be. The betrayal did not come dramatically. It came as data. She had been running a parallel investigation alongside the police in Kong Industries' own security apparatus. Quietly, independently, using contacts and methods she did not document and did not explain. She had the list of 35 people with internal access. She had narrowed it, using movement records, communication metadata, and a particular understanding of how leaks actually work in organizations. Not through dramatic conspiracy, but through small transactions, small compromises, small decisions made by people who believed they were too far from the center to matter. The data came together on a Tuesday. She sat with it for 6 hours before she went to Min Jae. He was in his office. It was late. The city outside was dark. She set the compiled file on his desk, sat across from him. He read it. She watched his face as he read it. She had watched faces read terrible things before. There is a particular way the muscles around the eyes respond to information that contradicts something the person believed to be true. Not shock, not anger, but a kind of interior adjustment. The face rearranging itself around a new reality. His face did it now. "My cousin," he said. "Ha Young-woo. His company has been losing major contracts to Kong Industries for 3 years. If you are removed, either from a position or from life, the board structure allows him to petition for interim management in conjunction with 2 of your board members who have existing business relationships with his subsidiary." She pointed to a page. Director Huang and Oh Sung-won. Oh Sung-won has been with this company for 20 years. He has also been managing 3 personal investments through Ha Jung-woo's subsidiary for 18 months. The conflict is documented. Min Jae set the file down. He looked at the window, at the city, at nothing in particular. She gave him a moment. "The security leak," he said. "Someone in your detail has been feeding movements to Ha Jung-woo's team. Your itinerary for Busan was sent to a private number 2 hours before we arrived." He looked at her. "Who?" "Park Ji-soo." Silence. She watched something happen in him. It was not an outburst. She had known it would not be an outburst, because Min Jae was not a man who provided the release of outbursts. It was something slower and harder. The recalculation. The rewriting of a trust that had been present so long it had become invisible. "He has been with me for 8 years, Min Jae said. "I know. He recommended you to me." Yes, she had thought about this. He recommended me because Ha Jung-woo's team knew they needed a new escalation. The previous 2 attempts had failed because your security was inadequate, not because it was actively working against you. Once I was brought in, the calculus changed. I became the obstacle. The leaks started providing my movement patterns as well as yours, which is why you were targeted in Busan. Yes. He stood, turned to the window, put one hand flat on the glass and stood there with his back to her, and she let him stand there, because this was what certain kinds of pain required. The posture of it, the physical acknowledgement. She said, "I have documented everything. The legal team can move on Ha Young-woo and the 2 board members tonight, if you authorize it. Police have been briefed through a contact I trust. Park Ji-soo can be detained without. I know the process." His voice was flat, not cold. Flat in a way that things are flat when the weight on them is enormous. "I know what to do." He turned from the window. "What I want to know is what comes next. For you." She said, "I'll remain on this assignment until the immediate threat is neutralized. Ha Young-woo won't stop. He will when the evidence is in the hands of prosecutors, and the board restructuring is complete. A man in his position doesn't escalate when the leverage is gone. He retreats. And after that," she held his gaze, "after that the assignment ends." The silence between them had a different quality to it now. It was not the professional silence of 2 people managing a situation. It was personal. It had weight and temperature. He said, "I don't want you to leave Korea. Min Jae, I'm telling you what I want. That is different from telling you what you must do. I know the difference." "Do you?" He moved toward her. Not fast, not aggressively. The way someone moves when they have decided to close a distance that has been maintained for too long. Because I'm not sure you allow yourself a space to know the difference between what someone wants from you and what someone wants for you. She stood her ground. Don't say that don't. Her voice was steady, but something in it had shifted. A thread of something pulled taut. Don't do this right now. We are in the middle of an active. We are in my office at 11 at night, after you have just handed me proof that my family and my security chief have been trying to have me killed. I don't believe this is a moment that calls for protocol. It is exactly the moment that calls for protocol. Because you're upset. You're hurt. And in those moments, people reach for... I'm not reaching, he said. I've been reaching for a long time. This is arriving. She looked at him, at his face, at the thing in his eyes that had been building since the gala, since the storm, since Busan, since every small room they had occupied together. She said, very quietly, my leaving the assignment has nothing to do with this. It has to do with the fact that after the threat is neutralized, the assignment is over. That is how this works. I don't want you to leave, he said again. Simple. Final. Min Jae. He turned from the window. His face had settled back into something nearer its usual arrangement, but the damage underneath was visible to her. The way a repaired crack in a wall is visible to the person who knows where to look. I want them all removed from this building, he said. Tonight, Oh Sungwon Hwang, every operational person who had contact with Park Ji-soo. My team is already preparing the documentation for legal. You'll have arrest warrants within 48. I don't want to talk about the legal process right now. He looked at her, a direct look, the kind that had no performance in it. I want to talk about you leaving. Min Jae, the assignment. I know what the assignment is. I am telling you that I don't want you to leave when it ends. He moved toward her. I have been trying to respect the line you've drawn. I have been trying to stay on my side of it. But I need you to understand that the line is not something I agreed to. It is something you established unilaterally, and I have been watching it from my side for weeks, and I don't... He stopped, breathed. I don't want to watch it anymore. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I know it perhaps more clearly than I have ever known anything, which is notable because clarity is something I consider one of my more dependable qualities. She stood her ground. What you're feeling right now is the product of shared proximity under extreme stress. It is documented. Don't, he said quietly. Don't catalog this. I'm not cataloging. You are. You are placing this in a category, so you don't have to feel it. He was close now. The same way you place the things you survived in categories, so they stay at a distance. I've watched you do it, with the mission in Aleppo, with the scar on your shoulder, with every moment in the past 2 months when something real passed between us, and you filed it somewhere it wouldn't cause you trouble. She was silent. The silence had weight. I'm not interested in a category, he said. I'm interested in you. If you think... She stopped. Try it again. Quieter. You are one of the most powerful men in this country. You have thousands of staff who depend on your stability. You have shareholders who require it. You have a company that has just survived an internal conspiracy attempt and is now restructuring under public scrutiny. She held his gaze. Adding this to your life right now is the one uncomplicated thing in it, he said. She looked at him. You, he said, you are the only uncomplicated thing I have encountered in 4 years of running this company. Not because you are easy. You are the least easy person I have ever met in my life. But because you are true. Every part of you that I have seen is exactly what it is. There is no performance. There is no calculation. There is just you. He paused. That is extremely rare. I don't intend to walk away from it because the timing is inconvenient. She opened her mouth. The sound came from below them in the building, and everything that had been gathering, the words unfinished, the answer unspoken, became suddenly irrelevant in the face of what was already in motion. She was already moving. Her hand was up, stop, and he stopped, training having made that reflex faster than thought, and she was at the door and listening, and the sound came again, and this time she recognized it. Not a mechanical sound, not weather, the specific resonance of a security system being overridden. Her earpiece crackled. Static, then. South access is breached. Multiple. The voice cut out. She turned back to him. Her face was back. The professional face. The face that had been trained over years to exclude everything that was not immediately useful. Center the room, she said, away from the windows. Now. He did not argue. They had prepared for this. Ha Jung-woo's team, or whoever he had hired for this final, desperate escalation, had clearly been planning for the possibility that the legal walls were closing in. The building security systems had been hacked remotely, a sophisticated intrusion that took the camera grid offline simultaneously on 5 floors. Snipers had been positioned on 2 adjacent rooftops, and a team of 6 had entered through the south maintenance access, which was exactly the unmonitored entry point she had flagged to Park Jisoo 3 weeks ago, and which he had, she now understood, very deliberately failed to address. She had also prepared. The earpiece channel she was using was not the building's standard security frequency. It was a private mesh network she had established independently in the first week. The 3 security personnel she trusted were on it. They were already moving. She got Min Jae to the internal stairwell on the 43rd floor and held him there while she managed the approach below, directed her team through the earpiece, listening to the sound of the building, tracking movement through the vibration she could feel through the walls and floor. The elevator shaft was compromised on the east side. She had expected that. The first 2 men reached the stairwell door. She was ready for them. The corridor fight was fast and ugly in close quarters in a way that made technique secondary to speed. She took a hit to the shoulder she had injured in Busan. Same side, same proximity to the old scar, and the pain was bright and specific, but she was already past it. Through the earpiece. North clear. 2 down. Your floor. There are 2 more on your floor. She looked at Min Jae. He was watching her. He had been watching her through all of it, not with fear. With something focused and tight and pain that she could not afford to look at directly, because looking at it directly would cost her something she needed for the next 3 minutes. Stairwell exit to 44th, she said. Go up, not down. There are 3 steps at the top. Don't trip on the 3rd. It's higher than standard. I'll be right behind you. Zuri. Go. He went. She followed, half a floor below. Clearing the stairwell as she moved, and when they came out onto the 44th floor, she scanned in both directions, clear, and moved them to the interior service corridor, which had no exterior wall, and therefore no sniper angle. Rain was coming in somewhere. A window was broken. The 2 remaining men came through the south corridor. She was between them and Min Jae. The fight was different in the service corridor. Narrow, less room, which worked in her favor, because it meant they couldn't use their numerical advantage simultaneously. She managed the space the way she always managed space, as geometry, as physics, as a series of problems that had solutions. The first problem was a man on her right, who was faster than she expected. The second was the gun. She saw it too late. Not much too late, just enough. The angle was wrong. She was between the weapon and Min Jae, which was where she was supposed to be, and she made the last, automatic, non-negotiable calculation of her training. She did not move. The shot came. She felt it. High on the left side, below the shoulder, above the ribs. Impact and then heat in that order, and then the slight delay before the nervous system registers the full message. She took 1 step back. She did not go down. She heard Min Jae. Not a shout. A sound with no category. A sound that comes from a place beneath language. She did not stop moving. She closed the last 3 feet to the gunman, and she finished it, and when she turned, the corridor was clear. She put her back against the wall. He was beside her in an instant. She didn't see him move. She just felt his hands, and then he was there, and the controlled, impenetrable, beautifully maintained exterior of Kong Min Jae was gone. Not in pieces. Not in controlled degrees. Gone. The way a light goes when the power fails. Complete, immediate, the darkness total. Where, he said, his hands were on her face, her shoulders. Not frantic, because even now some reflex of him remained precise, but urgent in a way that shook her, because she had not thought anything could make him urgent. Left side. I'm upright. I'm conscious. It's... Stop telling me you're fine. His voice cracked on the last word. An actual fracture in the sound. Stop. She looked at him. His face was... She did not have words for it. She who was not given to the expenditure of words. It was open in a way she suspected no one had seen it open, or perhaps anyone who was gone. She thought of a man who had run a company alone for 4 years because the alternative was trusting people who had proven over and over that they would eventually fail him. She thought of her own years of walking out before the walkout was done to her. I could survive losing my company, he said. The words came out quiet and entirely certain, the way the truest things tend to come out. I cannot survive losing you. She looked at him for a long moment. She said, that is a very inconvenient thing to tell someone who has been trying very hard to remain professional. I know, he said. I have no intention of making it convenient. She kissed him, or he kissed her. She was not certain of the direction, and it did not matter. It was brief. They were still in a compromised building in a service corridor with her losing blood, but was complete in the way that things are complete when they have been approaching for a long time. When she pulled back, his eyes were closed. When he opened them, she said, "We need to move." I know, he said. They moved. The investigation took 11 weeks. Ha Young-woo was arrested at his Jeju Island residence on a Tuesday morning. As the sun came up over the water, it made everything look deceptively clean. Directors Hwang and Oh Sung-won resigned under pressure before the police could formalize the conspiracy charges, which was a kind of cowardice that Min Jae found almost more offensive than the original betrayal. Park Ji-soo cooperated with authorities in exchange for reduced charges, and Min Jae said nothing when this was told to him, only put the phone down very carefully and sat for a few minutes in perfect silence. She gave him the silence. She had learned when he needed it. The company restructuring took longer. A new board, new security protocols, a full external audit that Min Jae had personally ordered without being asked. He cut every thread that could connect back to the compromise. He was methodical about it in the same way he was methodical about everything. No drama, no announcements, just a quiet dismantling of what was broken and the careful construction of what was needed. He was also different, not publicly different. Publicly, he was exactly what he had always been. Controlled, exact, devastating in a boardroom, and completely illegible in a social situation. The kind of man that other powerful men found both impressive and unsettling. But privately, in the small spaces of ordinary life, in the morning hours with coffee in the city outside, there was something in him that had been given room, an expansion in the chest cavity where the permanent tension had lived. She stayed. She did not announce that she was staying. She was there, and then she continued to be there. And one morning she woke up and realized that Seoul had stopped being a location and had become a place, and she was not sure when that had happened. And she sat with the realization for a long while before she decided she was not going to be frightened of it. The gala marking Kong Industries' new chapter was held 4 months after the arrests. The venue was different. The security was different. A team she had personally vetted, protocols she had written, sightlines she had mapped and accounted for. The guest list was smaller, more deliberate. Min Jae had stopped believing that scale was the same as strength. She wore deep emerald that night. A gown this time. She had chosen herself, and it had taken 3 hours and the patient suffering of his personal stylist, who had not expected, when she agreed to work with the CEO's bodyguard, to find herself conducting a highly specific structural assessment of which fabrics and silhouettes would allow for concealed carry and freedom of movement. The result was something that looked like it had been made for a ceremony and functioned like something made for a fight. Both things were true. She was learning to let both things be true. They arrived together, not in the bodyguard configuration. Side by side, both dressed for the evening, both at the door. People stared. She was used to being looked at for professional reasons. This was different, and she acknowledged the difference without letting it change anything about how she walked. Inside, a woman Min Jae introduced as a parliamentary minister tilted her head and said, with the polished curiosity of someone who has decided they are entitled to an answer, "So are you still his bodyguard, then?" Zuri looked at her, then at Min Jae. He was watching her with the expression he saved for moments he did not want to miss. She turned back to the minister. "Always," she said. The minister seemed satisfied by this, though Zuri suspected she had not understood it fully, which was fine. Some things are not for explaining. The evening was exactly what an evening like that is supposed to be. Careful, celebratory, weighted with the memory of how close it had come to being something else entirely. Min Jae moved through it with his particular gravity. She moved through it the way she moved through everything. Present, exact, watchful. At the end of the night, when the last guest had gone and the staff were quietly clearing and the city outside was doing its late-night breathing, they stood on the terrace together. He said, "Are you tired?" She said, "Yes." "Good," he said. "That means something happened worth being tired from." She looked at him. "That's the most obscure thing you've ever said to me. I have been told I am occasionally cryptic. You've been told correctly." He smiled. A full one. She had cataloged his smiles by now. The controlled half-lift he deployed in professional contexts, the involuntary one that escaped when she said something that surprised him, and this one which was different from both, which she had come to think of as his real smile, the one that belonged to the man behind the posture. She looked out at the city, at the lights on the Han River, the towers, the movement of it all. Someone asked me this evening, he said, whether I was concerned about Kong Industries' security posture going forward, given recent events. What did you tell them? I told them I had the best security in Asia, standing beside me at all times. He paused. They asked who. What did you say? I said I'd rather not advertise. He glanced at her. Was that the right answer? Yes, she said. A comfortable silence. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at it. His expression did not change, not visibly, but she had learned to read the microshifts, the small contractions around his eyes, the particular stillness that preceded significant information. What is it? She said. He turned the screen toward her. It was a text from a private number she did not recognize. 4 words. This isn't over yet. She took the phone from him. Read the number. Cross-reference it in her memory against the case files, the intercepted communications, the full map of the network she had spent 11 weeks building. The number matched nothing, which meant it was new, which meant whoever had sent it had not been part of the network. They had dismantled, which meant she looked up at the city, at the lights, at the thousands of windows that could be anything. She thought of snipers and ceilings and access points and all the ways that space becomes threat when someone decides it should. She felt it again, that particular quality of dread, the air pressure shift. Min Jae, she said. I know, he said. She handed him back the phone. We need to go inside. Yes, he said. She was already scanning the terrace perimeter, already mapping, already beginning. Because beginning was what she did, and this, whatever this was, whoever had sent those 4 words from a number that belonged to no one she had identified, this was going to require everything she had. She felt something else too, under the professional recalibration, a small, determined, quiet thing. She was not leaving. Whatever came next, she was not leaving, and she was not alone, and she was ready. If this story gripped you, if you felt your pulse shift when she stepped in front of that bullet, if you held your breath during the corridor fight, if you smiled at always, drop a comment right now. Where in the world are you reading this from, and what time is it there? We want to see just how far Zuri and Min Jae have traveled tonight. And if you want to see what that message means, who sent from an untraceable number, and whether their love can survive what's coming for them, let us know. Because the next chapter doesn't start with a gala. It starts with a funeral. Don't just read it alone. Share this with someone. Someone in your circle needs this story today. You already know who.